The dust had settled on everything except her shame. Izzy Lane pressed her face against the cracked window of the Greyhound bus, watching Oklahoma's endless horizon swallow another failed promise. Mia's small hand clutched a torn doll, the same way Izzy clutched hope, desperately, knowing it might slip away at any moment. 4 shelters in 3 months. Each rejection had carved deeper into her soul until she wondered if she was protecting her daughter or slowly destroying them both. The bus wheezed to a stop in Tulsa, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled like a funeral march for dreams she'd buried too young. Subscribe to witness how broken hearts find their way home. The Salvation Army shelter smelled of industrial soap and broken promises. Izzy sat on the narrow cot, watching Mia color with crayons worn down to stubs, her small fingers creating worlds more beautiful than the one they inhabited. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting harsh shadows across faces that had learned to hide their stories. Around them, other women moved through the motions of temporary living, folding clothes that would be packed again tomorrow, whispering prayers that sounded more like negotiations with an absent God. Izzy's sewing kit lay open beside her, needle and thread, ready to mend what could be salvaged, though she wondered if some tears ran too deep for fixing. The social worker's words from that morning echoed in her mind. "We can only extend your stay another week, Miss Lane. Another week to find work, housing, hope, miracles that seemed as distant as the stars Mia drew in purple crayon." The dinner bell rang with the finality of a judge's gavel, and Izzy helped Mia wash her hands in the communal sink. The little girl's reflection looked back at them from the cracked mirror, innocent eyes that still believed in happy endings, still trusted that Mama could fix anything. Izzy's own reflection showed the truth. 25 years old, but feeling ancient. Dark circles under green eyes that had once sparkled with dreams of a different life. Her auburn hair, once her pride, now hung limp and lifeless, pulled back in a practical ponytail that spoke of surrender rather than style. She'd been beautiful once, before life taught her that beauty was a luxury she couldn't afford, before she learned that love could leave you with nothing but a child to protect, and a heart too scared to trust again. The mirror reflected not just her face, but the weight of every choice that had led them here. In the dining hall, Mia picked at her mashed potatoes while Izzy forced herself to eat the tasteless chicken. Conversations flowed around them in hushed tones, women sharing stories of jobs lost, men who'd left, children taken away by systems that claimed to help. Izzy listened with half an ear, her attention focused on the newspaper someone had left behind. The classified section was circled and crossed out, dreams marked in red ink like wounds. "Seamstress wanted," read one ad, but it required experience she couldn't prove, and references she didn't have. "Childcare available," read another, but the pay wouldn't cover rent in even the worst neighborhoods. She folded the paper carefully, as if preserving hope itself, and slipped it into her purse next to the last $27 she owned. $27 between them and the street, between Mia's laughter and the silence of giving up. After dinner, they walked to the small playground behind the shelter, where broken swings creaked in the Oklahoma wind. Mia ran to the slide, her joy infectious despite their circumstances, and for a moment Izzy could pretend they were just a normal mother and daughter enjoying an evening together. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, the kind of beauty that made promises it couldn't keep. Other children played nearby, their mothers watching with the same mixture of love and desperation that Izzy recognized in her own heart. She thought about the life she'd imagined when she first held Mia, a little house with a garden, bedtime stories in a room that belonged to them, birthday parties with friends who stayed. Instead, they lived in a world of temporary everything, where home was whatever bed they could claim for the night. The wind carried the scent of distant rain, and Izzy wondered if storms always found those who had nowhere to run. As darkness fell, they returned to their cot, and Izzy helped Mia into her pajamas, the same ones she'd worn for 3 nights running. The little girl's prayers were simple and heartbreaking. God bless Mama, and please let us find a house with a yard for playing. Izzy tucked her in with a kiss that tasted of tears she refused to shed, then sat in the darkness, listening to the symphony of the shelter, snores and whispers, crying babies and restless dreams. Through the window, she could see the lights of Tulsa twinkling like earthbound stars, each one representing a life she couldn't touch, a world she couldn't enter. Her fingers traced the outline of her sewing kit, feeling the tools of a trade that had once given her purpose. Tomorrow she would try again, knock on doors, fill out applications, smile when her heart was breaking. Tomorrow she would be strong for Mia, because that's what mothers did. But tonight, in the darkness of a place that wasn't home, Izzy Lane allowed herself to dream of a man who might say the words that could change everything. The morning brought news that fell like a hammer blow to glass. Mrs. Henderson, the shelter coordinator, delivered it with the practiced gentleness of someone who'd broken hearts professionally for 20 years. "I'm sorry, Izzy, but we have a family of 6 coming in tonight. You and Mia will need to be out by noon." The words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire, and Izzy felt something inside her chest crack open. Mia was building a tower with donated blocks, humming a song she'd learned from another child, oblivious to the fact that their world was crumbling again. Izzy nodded, her throat too tight for words, and began the familiar ritual of packing their lives into 2 worn duffel bags. Each item told a story, Mia's favorite book, with pages soft from reading, a photograph of Izzy's mother who died too young, a baby blanket that smelled like hope and heartbreak. The other women watched with sympathy and relief, grateful it wasn't their turn to face the unknown. By 11:30, they stood on the sidewalk outside the shelter, their bags at their feet like anchors to a sinking ship. The Oklahoma sun beat down mercilessly, and Izzy shielded Mia's eyes while scanning the street for options that didn't exist. The bus station was 6 blocks away, but she had no destination in mind, no plan beyond survival. Mia tugged at her hand, asking questions in the innocent way of children who believed adults had all the answers. "Where are we going, Mama? Will there be other kids to play with?" Izzy's heart shattered a little more with each question, each display of trust she wasn't sure she deserved. She was about to suggest they walk toward downtown when a pickup truck pulled up to the curb, its engine rumbling like distant thunder. The driver was a man she'd never seen before, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. He stepped out of the truck with the careful movements of someone who'd learned that sudden gestures could frighten, and Izzy instinctively pulled Mia closer. But there was something in his face, a gentleness that contradicted his imposing size, a sadness that matched her own, that made her pause instead of run. "Excuse me," he said, his voice rough as gravel but warm as whiskey. "I couldn't help but notice you folks might need some help." Nye, his gaze took in their bags, their obvious displacement, and Izzy saw recognition there, not judgment, but understanding. She'd grown expert at reading faces, at distinguishing between those who saw her as a problem and those who saw her as human. This stranger's eyes held no pity, only a quiet strength that made her want to trust him, despite every lesson life had taught her. Mia peeked out from behind Izzy's legs, curious about the man who'd stopped to notice them when the rest of the world had learned to look away. "I'm Gideon Rourke," he continued, removing his hat in a gesture that spoke of old-fashioned manners and respect. "I run a ranch about 20 miles outside town. I heard from Mrs. Henderson that you're a seamstress, and I've got more mending than I know what to do with." He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully, and Izzy found herself holding her breath. "I've got a spare room in the house, and there's plenty of space for a little one to run around. The work wouldn't pay much in cash, but it would cover room and board," and he looked down at Mia, who was studying him with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Well, it's quiet out there, peaceful. Might be a good place for a fresh start." The offer hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm, and Izzy felt her world tilt on its axis. She'd learned to be suspicious of kindness, to look for the catch. the price that would be demanded later. But something in Gideon's weathered face spoke of genuine intention, of a loneliness that might understand her own. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of decision and the sound of Mia's quiet breathing. Izzy's mind raced through possibilities and dangers, through the practical considerations of accepting help from a stranger and the desperate reality of having nowhere else to go. She thought of the classified ads with their impossible requirements, of the shelters with their waiting lists and time limits, of the slow erosion of hope that came with each rejection. Then she looked at Mia, who was smiling up at Gideon with the open trust that only children possessed, and felt something shift inside her chest. "She'll have a home," Gideon said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "You'll have me." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of promise, of possibility, of a future that might hold more than mere survival. Izzy found herself nodding before her mind could catalogue all the reasons why this was dangerous, why trusting a stranger could destroy them both. But sometimes, when you're drowning, you have to believe that the hand reaching down to pull you up belongs to someone who won't let you fall. As they loaded their meager belongings into the back of his truck, Izzy caught Gideon watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Protective, perhaps, or maybe just lonely enough to understand that some rescues save the rescuer as much as the rescued. Mia chattered excitedly about horses and wide-open spaces, her 4-year-old imagination already painting pictures of the adventure ahead. Izzy settled into the passenger seat, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling, and watched Tulsa disappear in the side mirror as they drove toward an uncertain future that felt, for the first time in months, like it might hold the possibility of home. The first morning arrived with a silence so complete that Izzy woke thinking she had gone deaf. No traffic, no shouting through thin walls, no crying babies in adjacent rooms, just the whisper of wind through tall grass and the distant sound of horses moving in their paddock. Mia slept curled against her side, small fingers still clutching the edge of the quilt that smelled faintly of lavender and something indefinably masculine. Through the window, she could see Gideon already moving between the horses, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as if he had all the time in the world to tend to creatures that depended on him completely. She dressed quietly, smoothing Mia's hair before slipping downstairs to find coffee already made and a plate of eggs keeping warm on the stove. A note in careful handwriting read, "Help yourself. Back by noon. G." The simplicity of it made her throat tight with an emotion she couldn't name. When had anyone last thought to leave her food without expecting something in return? She ate standing at the kitchen window, watching the way morning light caught the dust motes dancing in the air, feeling like an intruder in someone else's carefully ordered life. Mia appeared an hour later, padding down the stairs in bare feet and yesterday's dress, her hair a tangle of golden curls that caught the light streaming through the windows. "Mama, where are the horses?" she asked, pressing her nose to the glass. And Izzy felt her heart clench at the wonder in her daughter's voice. They had lived in so many temporary places that Mia had learned not to ask for things, not to expect beauty or kindness, or the simple pleasure of watching animals move freely in open spaces. "They're outside, baby," Izzy said, lifting Mia to see better through the window. "But we have to be very quiet and very careful around them. They're big, and they don't know us yet." She watched Gideon emerge from the barn, leading a chestnut mare toward the water trough, his movements so fluid and confident that she found herself holding her breath. There was something about the way he moved that spoke of years spent earning trust from creatures that could sense fear or uncertainty from a mile away. The day stretched before them like an unwritten page, full of possibilities that both thrilled and terrified her. She had grown so accustomed to uncertainty, to packing their few belongings at a moment's notice, that the prospect of staying somewhere longer than a few nights felt almost dangerous. What if she let herself believe in this place, in the quiet kindness of a man who asked for nothing but offered everything. What if she let Mia fall in love with the horses and the endless sky, only to have it all disappear when Gideon realized what a burden they truly were? But as she watched her daughter's face light up at the sight of a red-winged blackbird landing on the fence post, Izzy felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the tight knot of fear she had carried for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. Gideon returned at noon exactly, his boots heavy on the porch steps, and found them sitting at the kitchen table where Mia was carefully coloring in a book that Izzy had pulled from her worn canvas bag. He paused in the doorway, and Izzy caught the way his eyes lingered on the domestic scene. The scattered crayons, the glass of milk with its ring of condensation on the wooden table, the way afternoon light fell across Mia's bent head as she worked with the intense concentration that only children possessed. For a moment, something unguarded flickered across his face, a longing so raw and immediate that Izzy had to look away. "She's been asking about the horses all morning," Izzy said, her voice carefully neutral, testing the waters of conversation with a man who seemed to measure his words like precious coins. Gideon nodded, washing his hands at the sink with methodical thoroughness, and she found herself studying the line of his shoulders, the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, where the sun had touched it. "Horses are good judges of character," he said finally, drying his hands on a dish towel that looked like it had seen better days. "They know things about people that people don't always know about themselves." He looked at Mia, who had stopped coloring to listen with the rapt attention she usually reserved for bedtime stories. "Would you like to meet them, little one?" The transformation in Mia was immediate and complete. Her face lit up like Christmas morning, and she scrambled down from her chair with an enthusiasm that made Izzy's chest ache with love and worry in equal measure. "Can I touch them? Are they soft? Do they have names?" The questions tumbled out in a rush, and Gideon's mouth curved in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "They all have names," he said, crouching down to Mia's level with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his size and the careful distance he maintained from the world. "And yes, they're soft. But first, you have to learn the rules. Horses are big and strong, and they need to know they can trust you before they'll let you close." He glanced at Izzy, and she saw something in his eyes that made her wonder if he was talking about more than just horses. They walked to the paddock together, Mia between them, her small hand tucked securely in Gideon's larger one, as if it belonged there. Izzy followed a step behind, watching the way he shortened his stride to match her daughter's, the way he pointed out the different horses and spoke their names like introductions to old friends. "That's Duchess, the bay mare. She's the boss of everyone, including me. And the grey gelding is Storm. He's gentle as a lamb, but thinks he's a racehorse." The afternoon passed in a haze of wonder and careful instruction, Gideon teaching Mia how to approach the horses with an open palm, how to let them smell her before trying to touch them, how to read the language of ears and eyes and the subtle shift of weight that meant welcome or wariness. Izzy watched from the fence rail, her heart in her throat every time Mia reached toward those massive, beautiful creatures, but also marveling at the patience Gideon showed, the way he seemed to understand exactly how much trust a 4-year-old could handle at once. Evening came soft and golden, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that made the whole world look like it had been dipped in honey. Izzy stood at the kitchen sink, washing the dishes from their simple dinner of soup and cornbread, while Mia sat on the living room floor, carefully arranging her few toys in the space between the couch and the coffee table. Through the window, she could see Gideon moving through his evening routine, checking the horses one last time, securing the barn, walking the perimeter of the property with the measured pace of a man who had learned that vigilance was the price of peace. The house settled around them, with the comfortable creaks and sighs of a place that had weathered many seasons, many storms, many quiet evenings, just like this one. Izzy found herself listening to the sounds, Mia's soft humming as she played, the distant lowing of cattle in the far pasture, the whisper of wind through the cottonwood trees that lined the drive. It was a symphony of belonging that she had almost forgotten existed, a reminder that home was not just a place, but a feeling, a sense of safety that sank into your bones and made you believe that tomorrow would come and you would still be welcome when it did. When Gideon came back inside, he found them curled together on the couch, Mia's head heavy against Izzy's shoulder as she fought sleep with the stubborn determination of a child who didn't want the day to end. He paused in the doorway again, and Izzy wondered if he always hesitated before entering rooms where other people waited, as if he needed a moment to remember how to be around those who might expect conversation or connection, or the simple acknowledgement of shared space. "She had a good day," Izzy said softly, smoothing Mia's hair with gentle fingers. "I think she's already half in love with those horses." Gideon nodded, settling into the armchair across from them, with the careful movements of a man who was still learning how to be comfortable in his own home when it held more than just his own solitude. "They're good for children," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "Teach them responsibility, patience, how to earn trust instead of demanding it." He looked at Mia's sleeping face, and something shifted in his expression, a softening that made Izzy's breath catch in her throat. "She can help me with the morning feeding if she wants, if you think she's ready for that kind of responsibility." The offer hung in the air between them, weighted with implications that neither of them was quite ready to name. It was more than just an invitation to help with chores. It was an acknowledgement that they might stay long enough for Mia to learn routines, to become part of the daily rhythm of life on the ranch. It was a tentative step towards something that looked suspiciously like permanence, and Izzy felt her heart race with equal parts hope and terror. She would love that, she whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, and somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied softly, as if calling them all home.